Hi, so in this video we're going to talk about the map function in Python. This video is part of a larger course called Higher Order Functions, so check out the link in the description if you're interested in more on this topic. So what does the map function in Python really do? So let me just paste in a short description. So the map function essentially takes in a list and a function and performs the function on each element in the list. So to wrap our heads around this, let's look at an example. So we had our list of numbers. This contained the elements 8, 15, 42, 23, 4, and 16. So say now that I want to create a new list containing each of these numbers squared. What I will then do is to first make a function. Let's call it square, takes in a number, and it returns the squared number. So what I want to do is to apply this function to each element in my list of numbers. Then I'll use the map function. In the first argument, I'll write my function. So this is the square function. Notice that I'm not calling the function on an argument, I'm just passing in the whole function. And the second argument is a list I want to apply the square function to. So this is the list of numbers. And now let me just print this and run the cell. What you can see here is that I've obtained a map object. If you're familiar with generators, then this is an example of a generator. But for our case, if you just want the list back, then what we can do is to wrap this into the list constructor. And here we have an array of the squared numbers. So 64 is the square root of 8, 225 is the square root of 15, and so on. So instead of printing this, I can simply also assign it to a new variable, new list, and that's about it. Before moving on to more examples, this is a great place to introduce Lambda functions. So Lambda functions are also what's called anonymous functions in other languages. And the motivation for Lambda functions are this small annoying thing that I have to declare my own function here, give it a name and declare it here externally, even though I only need it at a single point here. It's not possible for me really to just paste this in here. This does not work, but what I can do is to make a function that is only supposed to be used once and doesn't really need a name. So for this, I can use a lambda function. So let me try to copy this, but instead of using the square function, here I'll make my own inline function with the lambda keyword. So you can see here that it recognized this as a Python keyword, and the syntax here is to send a number, colon, to the number squared. And if I now make this into a comment and just have this new list and print it out, you can see that it does exactly the same thing. So in this case, I don't really need to make an external function. You can do that if you want. This is a good idea if you want to use it multiple times. But if you only need to use a function once, then a lambda function is great. So again, the syntax is lambda, then the argument you take in, then a colon, and then the output. So this is a great way to make a short function that doesn't really require a name that we can just pass into another function. So to get a better handle of this, let's do a few more examples. So let's do an example where we have a few greetings. Let me just begin a new cell here. Here's a list of greetings. So it's hi there, hi-oh, good morning, and what's up. So what can I do about this? What I want to do is to make a new list where each entry in the list corresponds to the number of letters here in each of these messages. The first way I can do this is simply with a for loop. So this is just to illustrate that the map function is really just something you could achieve with a usual for loop as well. What you would then do is to make an empty array, let's call it length of greetings. Let's just initiate this to be an empty array. And then we do a basic for loop. So for each greeting in greetings, we take our length of greetings and we just append the length of the greeting. This is it. This is everything we need to do. And now we can print out the length of greetings and run this. And these are the lengths. So for instance, hi there has length 8, hi-oh has length 4, and so on. But instead of doing it the for loop way, we can do it with a map as well. So here, let's do it with the map. We need a function, and the function is simply the length function. This is already defined in Python, so everything is great. And greetings. Now this works. We should maybe also convert it into a list for simplicity. So let's again print the length of greetings. You can see now that this gives us exactly the same thing. This single line here is for me a lot more readable than first using one line just to initiate an empty list, and then 2 more lines essentially using a for loop to go through the list. Just a note, if you were to try this and you would write it with a lambda sending x to the length of x, just to clarify, this will also work, although it's not necessary since the length function is built into Python. So as a final topic, I want to show you that the map function can deal with more than one iterable. In our case, we're just working with lists, but you could also do other iterables, like for instance a tuple. So I've pre-written 2 lists here. One is a first name, and the second is the last name list. First names are Walter, Jesse, Skylar, and Gustavo, and the last names are White, Pinkman, White, and Fring. So I want to make a list called full names. I could do a double for loop to do this, but this is really annoying and a lot of code to do a very simple thing. So for this, I'll just use my map function. So to explain the syntax, I'll first pass in a function, then I'll pass in my first names, and then I'll pass in my last names. And for these 2, this is not really a comment, this is precisely what I'm going to pass in. But for the function, I'll pass in a function that takes 2 arguments and returns essentially a combination of them. So again, I'll use a lambda, but in this time it takes in an x and a y. So first, x will be equal to Walter, and y will be equal to White, and I want them to be combined. So x and y should be sent to x plus, and then I need a space, plus y. So here the plus symbol is string concatenation. And really this is it. I should also convert this to a list at the end. Like this. Let me just run it. Looks fine. And if I print now the full names, you can see now that the full names have been put together. This is all I wanted to say about the map function in Python. It's a really convenient and easy thing to do. The map function is also present in a lot of other programming languages, so it's a good idea to get familiar with this. Thanks, and I'll see you again in the next video.